Homer's The Odyssey is one of the oldest, most famous, and most influential stories in human history. Composed nearly 3,000 years ago, it is the ultimate ancient tale of survival, cunning, and the desperate desire to make it back home. The epic follows the Greek hero Odysseus after the fall of Troy, tracking his grueling 10-year journey across seas filled with vengeful gods, terrifying monsters, and impossible moral choices. While its prequel, the Iliad, was a story about brute strength and the glory of war, the Odyssey is a story about intelligence, resilience, and the power of the human mind. It established the classic hero's journey archetype and essentially laid the groundwork for all Western literature that followed. To truly understand a story this massive, it helps to break it down. The 100 facts below offer a comprehensive deep dive into the world of this ancient masterpiece. They cover the mysterious origins of its creation, the rhythmic magic of oral storytelling, the complex web of gods and monsters, and the brutal reality of the ancient Greek moral code. Whether you are a massive mythology buff, a history nerd, or just trying to wrap your head around a classic literature assignment, this breakdown covers the history, the heartbreak, and the legacy behind the ultimate epic journey. 1. The true identity of Homer remains one of the greatest mysteries in literary history, a debate scholars refer to as the Homeric question. Many historians believe Homer was not a single historical person, but rather a legendary figure to whom a long tradition of oral poetry was attributed. Some argue the epic was composed by multiple poets over generations, while others maintain that a single genius synthesized these older stories into the masterpiece we know today. 2. Before the Odyssey was ever written down, it was performed orally by traveling bards known as rhapsodes. These poets memorized vast amounts of verse and sang them to audiences, likely accompanied by a lyre. The repetition, structured meter, and recurring phrases were all mnemonic devices designed to help the bards remember the story as they performed it live across ancient Greece. 3. The original Greek text of the Odyssey was composed in a specific poetic meter called dactylic hexameter, which is often referred to as the meter of epic. This rhythmic structure consists of 6 feet per line, usually featuring a long syllable followed by 2 short syllables, a dactyl. This consistent, driving rhythm gave the epic a musical quality that made it engaging to listen to and easier for the original bards to memorize. 4. To fit the strict metrical requirements of dactylic hexameter, Homer frequently used epithets, recurring descriptive phrases attached to character names. Familiar examples include gray-eyed Athena, swift-footed Achilles, and rosy-fingered Dawn. These epithets not only help the poet maintain the rhythm of the line, but also reinforce the core traits of the characters and deities to the listening audience. 5. The Odyssey is effectively a sequel to Homer's other great epic, the Iliad, which details the events of the Trojan War. While the Iliad focuses on the wrath of Achilles and the brutal realities of combat over a few weeks, the Odyssey focuses on the 10-year aftermath as one surviving Greek hero tries to find his way home. Together, these two works form the foundational pillars of Western literature. The epic does not begin at the start of Odysseus' journey from Troy. Instead, it famously begins in medias res, or in the middle of things. When the story opens, Odysseus has already been missing for nearly 20 years and is trapped on the island of the nymph Calypso. The earlier parts of his journey are told later in the narrative through a series of flashbacks when Odysseus recounts his adventures to the Phaeacians. One of the most important cultural concepts in the Odyssey is xenia, the ancient Greek law of hospitality. According to this custom, hosts were expected to welcome strangers, feed them, and offer them gifts, while guests were expected to be respectful and courteous. The epic constantly contrasts good examples of xenia, like the Phaeacians, with monstrous violations of it, like the Cyclops eating his guests, or the suitors abusing Odysseus' home. The first 4 books of the epic are completely focused on Odysseus' son, Telemachus, in a section scholars call the Telemachy. Telemachus is portrayed as a young man struggling to come of age in a household overrun by aggressive suitors. Guided by the goddess Athena, he embarks on his own mini Odyssey to the mainland to seek news of his father, effectively growing from a helpless boy into a capable prince. The very first line of the epic refers to Odysseus as polytropos, a Greek word that translates to a man of many turns, or a man of many wiles. Unlike Achilles, whose primary attribute is raw physical strength and martial prowess, Odysseus's greatest weapon is his intellect. He survives his harrowing journey not by outmuscling his opponents, but by relying on his cunning, deception, and strategic mind. The gods are active participants in the mortal world of the Odyssey, most notably Athena, the goddess of wisdom and battle strategy. She serves as the patron deity of both Odysseus and Telemachus, often appearing to them in disguise to offer guidance. Her most famous disguise is as an old family friend named Mentor, a character whose name gave us the modern English word for a trusted guide or teacher. The Lotus Eaters. Early in his wanderings, Odysseus and his crew land on the island of the Lotus Eaters, a people who consume a mysterious narcotic plant. When some of Odysseus's men eat the lotus, they immediately lose all desire to return home to Ithaca, wanting only to stay and eat the fruit forever. Odysseus is forced to physically drag his men back to the ships and tie them to the rowing benches to save them from a life of apathy. The nobody trick. When blinding the Cyclops, Odysseus uses a brilliant linguistic trick. He tells Polyphemus that his name is nobody, Autos in Greek. When the giant is blinded and screams for help from the other Cyclops, he yells, "Nobody is killing me." Thinking Polyphemus is simply sick or struck by the gods, the others leave him alone, ensuring Odysseus's clever escape plan remains unthwarted. The Bag of Winds. Odysseus receives a magical gift from Aeolus, the Warden of the Winds, a leather bag containing all the contrary winds that could blow his ship off course. With only the favorable west wind left free, Odysseus sails so close to Ithaca that he can see the fires on the shore. Tragically, he falls asleep, and his greedy crew opens the bag, thinking it contains treasure. The unleashed winds blow them all the way back to square one. Circe the sorceress. On the island of Aiaia, Odysseus encounters Circe, a powerful sorceress who turns half of his scouting party into pigs, using a magic potion. With the help of the messenger god Hermes, who provides him with a magical herb called moly to resist her magic, Odysseus dominates Circe and forces her to turn his men back. They end up staying on her island for a full year in luxury before the crew reminds Odysseus of their home. The Siren Song. Odysseus is warned about the sirens, monstrous creatures who lure sailors to their deaths by singing an irresistibly beautiful song. Wanting to hear the music without dying, Odysseus has his crew plug their own ears with beeswax and tie him tightly to the ship's mast. As they sail past, Odysseus begs to be untied, but his deafened crew simply binds him tighter until they are safely out of range. 16. Scylla and Charybdis. Navigating a narrow strait, Odysseus is forced to choose between two deadly sea monsters: Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that swallows entire ships, and Scylla, a six-headed beast dwelling in a cliffside cave. Following Circe's advice, Odysseus sails closer to Scylla. He loses 6 of his best men to her jaws, but saves the rest of the ship from being completely destroyed by the whirlpool. A classic lesser of two evils scenario. 17. The Cattle of the Sun God. The final doom of Odysseus's crew occurs on the island of Thrinacia, where the sun god Helios keeps his sacred cattle. Despite strict warnings from both Tiresias and Circe not to harm the animals, the starving crew slaughters the cattle while Odysseus is sleeping. In retribution, Zeus strikes their ship with a lightning bolt, destroying the vessel and drowning everyone except Odysseus, who alone survives. 18. Calypso's Golden Cage. Following the destruction of his ship, Odysseus washes ashore on Ogygia, the island of the beautiful nymph Calypso. She keeps him there as a captive lover for 7 long years, offering him immortality and eternal youth if he will only stay with her. Despite this temptation, Odysseus spends his days weeping on the beach, preferring to grow old and die as a mortal if it means returning to his wife and home. 19. Penelope's weaving trick. Back in Ithaca, Odysseus's wife Penelope faces immense pressure to marry one of the 108 aggressive suitors occupying her home. To delay them, she claims she must first finish weaving a burial shroud for her father-in-law Laertes. For 3 years, she weaves the shroud during the day and secretly unravels her work by torchlight every night, perfectly matching her husband's legendary talent for deception. Arrival in disguise. When Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca after 20 years, Athena disguises him as an old, scarred beggar so he can evaluate the loyalty of his household. This disguise allows him to infiltrate his own palace undetected, observe the atrocious behavior of the suitors, and test the faithfulness of his wife and servants without immediately putting a target on his back. The tragedy of Argus. One of the most heartbreaking moments in the epic occurs when Odysseus, still disguised as a beggar, approaches his palace and sees his old hunting dog, Argus. Now ancient, neglected, and lying on a pile of dung, Argus is the only one to instantly recognize his master through the magical disguise. The dog wags his tail and drops his ears in greeting, but dies immediately after, having waited 20 years to see his master one last time. Euryclea and the Scar. Odysseus's identity is nearly compromised when his old wet nurse, Euryclea, is ordered to wash the beggar's feet as a sign of hospitality. While washing him, she feels a distinctive scar on his thigh, an injury he sustained from a wild boar's tusk during a hunting trip in his youth. Recognizing him instantly, she is quickly silenced by Odysseus, who swears her to secrecy so his revenge plot is not ruined. The test of the bow. Penelope finally agrees to choose a new husband through an impossible contest. The suitors must string Odysseus's massive hunting bow and shoot an arrow cleanly through the rings of 12 axe heads lined up in a row. All the suitors fail to even bend the bow. Odysseus, still in his beggar disguise, asks for a turn. He strings the bow effortlessly and shoots the arrow perfectly through the axes, revealing his true strength. The slaughter in the hall. Immediately following the bow contest, Odysseus throws off his disguise, and aided by Telemachus and 2 loyal herdsmen, begins slaughtering the suitors. The battle in the Great Hall is brutal and merciless, reflecting the severe ancient Greek view of justice for those who violate the sacred rules of hospitality and disrespect a king's household. None of the suitors are spared. The bed rooted in the earth. Even after the suitors are dead, Penelope remains skeptical that this man is truly her husband, fearing a trick by the gods. She tests him by ordering a servant to move their heavy marital bed out of the bedchamber. Odysseus explodes in anger, revealing that the bed cannot be moved because he built it himself, carving one of its posts directly out of a living olive tree rooted in the ground, a secret only the two of them knew. The reunion with Laertes. After reclaiming his household, Odysseus visits his elderly father, Laertes, who is grieving and tending to his farm in rags. Odysseus initially tests his father with a fake story, but when Laertes breaks down in tears, Odysseus reveals himself, proving his identity by showing his scar and naming the exact number of fruit trees his father gave him as a child. A divine ceasefire. The epic does not end immediately with the reunion of the family. The families of the dead suitors arm themselves and march on Odysseus's farm to seek blood revenge, threatening to plunge Ithaca into a vicious civil war. Just as the fighting begins, the goddess Athena descends from the heavens, a classic deus ex machina, and forces both sides to swear a pact of peace, finally bringing an end to Odysseus's long and bloody saga. While the Odyssey was likely composed during the Greek Iron Age, around the 8th or 7th century BCE, the story itself is set hundreds of years earlier, during the Mycenaean Bronze Age, around the 12th century BCE. Because of this time gap, the epic features anachronisms, objects or practices from Homer's own time, mixed with the older legends. For example, characters occasionally use iron tools or weapons, even though bronze would have been the standard metal during the actual era of the Trojan War. While many of the locations in the Odyssey are purely mythical, Ithaca is a real island in the Ionian Sea. However, modern scholars and archaeologists have long debated whether the modern island named Ithaca is the same place Homer described. Homer's geographical descriptions of Ithaca's position relative to neighboring islands do not perfectly match the real-world map, leading to various theories that ancient Ithaca might actually be the neighboring peninsula of Peliki or another nearby island entirely. A central theme of the epic is nostos, an ancient Greek word meaning homecoming or return. This concept was so important in Greek culture that it formed its own subgenre of epic poetry, detailing the various returns of the Greek heroes from Troy. Our modern English word nostalgia is actually derived from this Greek root, literally translating to the pain, algos, of desiring to return home. Odysseus's entire narrative is driven by his overwhelming desire for nostos. In the Iliad, the ultimate goal for a hero is kleos, meaning glory or renown, usually achieved by dying a spectacular death on the battlefield. The Odyssey actively subverts this idea. When Odysseus meets the ghost of Achilles in the underworld, Achilles rejects his posthumous glory, famously stating he would rather be a living servant to a poor farmer than the king of the dead. The Odyssey celebrates survival, endurance, and living to see one's family again over the pursuit of a glorious battlefield death. Eumaeus is Odysseus's loyal swineherd and one of the most unique characters in ancient epic poetry. In a genre that usually focuses exclusively on kings and warriors, Homer dedicates significant time to a humble servant, even addressing him directly in the text with affectionate phrases like, "And you, Eumaeus, answered him." Eumaeus was actually born a prince, but was kidnapped by pirates as a child and sold into slavery, illustrating the precarious nature of fate in the ancient world. After washing ashore on the island of Scheria, naked, battered, and crusted with salt, Odysseus is discovered by the young Phaeacian princess, Nausicaa. While her handmaidens flee in terror from the rugged stranger, Nausicaa stands her ground, bolstered by courage given to her by Athena. Odysseus uses his incredible charm and rhetorical skill to flatter her without crossing boundaries, and she provides him with clothing and directions to the palace, acting as a crucial savior in his journey. When Nausicaa directs Odysseus to the Phaeacian palace, she specifically tells him to bypass her father, King Alcinous, and throw himself at the knees of her mother, Queen Arete. In Phaeacian society, Arete holds immense respect and acts as a wise judge and peacemaker among her people. This highlights a fascinating aspect of Homeric society, where certain royal women wielded significant political and social power, contrary to the more restricted lives of women in later classical Athens. When Telemachus leaves Ithaca to search for his father, his first stop is the kingdom of Pylos to speak with King Nestor. Nestor is the oldest and wisest of the Greek kings who fought at Troy, known for his long-winded speeches and reminiscences about the good old days. While Nestor provides excellent hospitality, Xenia, and treats Telemachus well, he ultimately knows nothing of Odysseus's fate, forcing the young prince to continue his journey to Sparta. (36) Telemachus's next stop is Sparta, where he meets King Menelaus and Queen Helen, the very woman whose kidnapping sparked the Trojan War. The couple is back together, though their dynamic is highly tense and filled with subtle psychological undercurrents. Helen even drugs the dinner wine with a potion from Egypt to banish sorrow and prevent the guests from crying as they recount the painful memories of the war and the absent Odysseus. 37. In stark contrast to the loyal swineherd Eumaeus, the goatherd Melanthius represents the servants who betrayed Odysseus during his absence. When Odysseus is disguised as a beggar, Melanthius verbally abuses him and physically kicks him in the hip. During the final battle, Melanthius attempts to arm the suitors by sneaking into the storeroom. He is ultimately caught by Odysseus's loyal men, tied to the rafters, and later meets a brutally gruesome end for his treason. 38. Antinous is the most arrogant and physically aggressive of the suitors occupying Odysseus's house. He is the first to mock the disguised Odysseus, even throwing a wooden footstool at the hero's back. Antinous also leads the conspiracy to ambush and murder Telemachus upon the prince's return to Ithaca. Because of his flagrant disrespect for the god's laws of hospitality and his malicious intent, Antinous is the very first suitor to be killed, shot through the throat by Odysseus's arrow. 39. While Antinous is the physical bully of the suitors, Eurymachus is the smooth-talking, manipulative politician. He frequently lies to Penelope, promising to protect Telemachus while secretly plotting the boy's death. When Odysseus begins his slaughter, Eurymachus tries to save his own life by blaming everything on the recently deceased Antinous and offering to pay Odysseus back in bronze and gold. Odysseus rejects the bribe, and Eurymachus is killed next. During his 20-year absence, a number of the female servants in Odysseus's household began sleeping with the suitors and disrespecting Penelope. After the suitors are killed, Odysseus forces these disloyal women to clean the blood and gore from the Great Hall. Once the grim task is finished, Telemachus executes them by hanging them all from a single rope in the courtyard, a harsh reflection of ancient Greek property laws and the severe expectations of loyalty. While Poseidon and Athena are the most active gods in the story, Zeus operates in the background as the supreme authority and arbiter of justice. It is Zeus who ultimately permits Athena to help Odysseus, and it is Zeus who sends Hermes to order Calypso to release him. Zeus represents the cosmic order. He punishes those who break sacred oaths, like Odysseus's crew eating the sun god's cattle, and ensures that fate eventually runs its proper course. Hermes, the messenger god and guide of travelers, plays two vital roles in the Odyssey. First, he delivers the god's mandate to Calypso, forcing her to let Odysseus build a raft and leave her island. Second, he intercepts Odysseus on Circe's island, providing him with the magical herd Moli, and giving him precise tactical instructions on how to defeat the sorceress. Without Hermes' timely interventions, Odysseus would have remained trapped on either island forever. When Odysseus is sailing away from Calypso's island, Poseidon spots him and unleashes a massive, ship-shattering hurricane. As Odysseus is drowning, he is rescued by a minor sea goddess named Ino, also known as Leucothea. Taking pity on him, she gives him a magical veil that protects him from drowning and injury, telling him to abandon his shattered raft and swim for the Phaeacian coast. Once safe, he throws the veil back into the sea, as instructed. The version of the Odyssey we read today owes its existence to the scholars of the Library of Alexandria in the 3rd and 2nd centuries BCE. These ancient academics gathered various regional manuscripts of Homer's work, compared them, and standardized the text. They are also the ones who divided the epic into 24 distinct books, chapters, corresponding to the 24 letters of the Greek alphabet, a structure that has been maintained in translations for over 2 millennia. The Odyssey is often cited as one of the earliest and most perfect examples of the monomyth, or the hero's journey, a narrative framework famously outlined by mythologist Joseph Campbell. Odysseus's adventure maps perfectly onto this structure. He receives a call to adventure, crosses the threshold into a supernatural world, faces trials and temptations, descends into the abyss, the underworld, and ultimately returns home transformed, bringing a boon, peace and order, back to his people. One of the most famous literary homages to Homer's epic is James Joyce's 1922 modernist novel, Ulysses, the Roman name for Odysseus. Joyce transposed the ancient Mediterranean epic onto a single ordinary day in Dublin, Ireland. The novel's protagonist, Leopold Bloom, serves as the modern Odysseus, wandering the city, and encountering everyday equivalents of Homer's monsters and characters, proving that the structural bones of the Odyssey remain relevant to modern storytelling. Here are 4 more detailed, paragraph-long facts about the Odyssey, continuing the deep dive into its rich literary and historical elements. While the hero is famously known as Odysseus in Greek, he is just as frequently referred to as Ulysses in Western literature. This is because the ancient Romans adopted and adapted Greek mythology, changing his name to Ulysses, which eventually evolved from Ulysses because Latin was the primary language of scholarship and literature in Europe for centuries. Many famous writers, including Dante in his Inferno and Lord Tennyson in his famous Victorian poem, knew and wrote about the hero under his Roman name. It wasn't until the Renaissance, when the original Greek texts were widely rediscovered, that the name Odysseus reclaimed its primary place. A major moral lesson in the Odyssey centers around the concept of hubris, or excessive, defiant pride. The prime example occurs right after the blinding of the Cyclops. Odysseus executes a flawless escape using his nobody trick. But as his ship rows away to safety, his ego takes over. Unable to let the monster think he was defeated by a random nobody, Odysseus taunts the giant and screams his true name, his father's name, and his home address. This catastrophic moment of hubris is what allows Polyphemus to accurately pray to his father, Poseidon, bringing down the terrible curse that destroys Odysseus's crew. In Book 19, Penelope shares a vivid dream with the disguised Odysseus. A great eagle swoops down and breaks the necks of her 20 pet geese, then speaks with her husband's voice to announce the doom of the suitors. Beyond being a brilliant piece of foreshadowing, Penelope uses this moment to explain ancient dream theory. She tells the beggar that dreams pass through 2 gates, the gate of ivory, which brings false, deceptive dreams, and the gate of horn, which brings true, prophetic visions. This poetic imagery became a massive literary trope, later adopted by Virgil in the Aeneid and countless other writers. Right before the bloody climax in the Great Hall, the prophet Theoclymenus has a sudden horrifying vision. He sees the suitors' faces dripping with blood, ghosts crowding the courtyard, and the sun completely blotted out from the sky. While this is clearly a poetic metaphor for their impending doom, some modern astronomers and classicists have argued it might be based on a real event. By cross-referencing astronomical data with the mythological timeline, some scholars believe Homer was describing a genuine total solar eclipse that passed over the Ionian Islands on April 16, 1178 BCE, grounding the epic's climax in a terrifying historical natural phenomenon. Homer includes 2 prominent bards within the story, Phemius in Ithaca and Demodocus in Scheria. These characters are often viewed by scholars as Homer's way of inserting a self-portrait into his own work. Demodocus is even described as being blind, which is the primary source of the legend that Homer himself was a blind poet. These bards serve to show how important poets were in ancient society as the keepers of history and the expenders of fame. Often overshadowed by the later mythological monsters, Odysseus's very first stop after leaving Troy is completely grounded in brutal human warfare. His fleet lands at Ismarus, the city of the Cicones, where his men sack the town like typical Bronze Age pirates. However, the crew ignores Odysseus's orders to leave immediately, staying on the beach to feast and drink. This arrogant delay allows the surviving Cicones to call for inland reinforcements, leading to a massive counterattack that results in the deaths of 72 of Odysseus's men. An early and painful lesson in the dangers of greed and indiscipline. The greatest single loss of life in Odysseus's journey happens not by the Cyclops or the whirlpool Charybdis, but at the hands of the Laestrygonians, a tribe of giant, bloodthirsty cannibals. When the Greek fleet anchors in their seemingly peaceful, deeply recessed harbor, the giants ambush them, throwing massive boulders from the cliffs to smash the ships to splinters and spearing the drowning men like fish. Out of the original 12 ships that left Troy, 11 are completely destroyed in this massacre. Only Odysseus's flagship survives because he cautiously anchored it outside the harbor, demonstrating his signature paranoia and strategic foresight. In Book 4, King Menelaus recounts an incredible adventure to Telemachus regarding his own difficult journey home from Troy. Trapped in Egypt without wind, Menelaus is advised to ambush Proteus, the old man of the sea, a minor water deity who knows everything but refuses to share his knowledge willingly. Menelaus and his men disguise themselves in putrid sealskins to get close to the sleeping god, then tackle him. Proteus furiously shapeshifts into a lion, a serpent, a panther, a giant boar, running water, and even a tree. But Menelaus holds on tightly until the exhausted god yields and answers his questions. During that same visit to Sparta, Helen shares a deeply unsettling story about the Trojan War that highlights her complex and ambiguous nature. She recalls the night the Greeks were hiding inside the wooden Trojan horse in the center of Troy. Helen walked around the horse, mimicking the exact voices of the Greek soldiers' wives, calling out to the men in the dark to tempt them into answering. The illusion was so perfect that several Greeks nearly cried out and gave away the ambush, stopped only by Odysseus physically clamping his hands over their mouths. A crucial concept in the Odyssey is homophrosyne, a Greek term meaning like-mindedness or harmony of mind. Odysseus explicitly praises this ideal when speaking to the Phaeacian princess, stating that there is nothing better in life than a husband and wife who share the same thoughts and strategies. This concept perfectly defines the relationship between Odysseus and Penelope. Even though they are separated for 20 years, they operate on the exact same intellectual wavelength, both using deception, caution, and incredible patience to survive their respective ordeals until they can finally be reunited. 57. When Odysseus visits the underworld, the prophet Tiresias tells him that his journey will not end when he reclaims his home in Ithaca. To finally appease the sea god Poseidon, Odysseus must undertake a bizarre final mission. He must walk inland, carrying a ship's oar, until he reaches a people who know absolutely nothing of the sea, who do not use salt, and who mistake his oar for a winnowing fan, an agricultural tool for grain. Only there can he plant the oar in the earth, make a massive sacrifice to Poseidon, and finally achieve a peaceful old age. 58. The climax of the Odyssey heavily features Odysseus's legendary bow, which highlights a fascinating cultural shift from Homer's other epic, the Iliad. In the Trojan War epic, the bow is often viewed as a somewhat cowardly weapon used by those afraid of hand-to-hand combat, like Paris, who shoots Achilles from a distance. However, in the Odyssey, the bow is elevated to a symbol of ultimate, localized authority and raw physical strength, as none of the younger, softer suitors can even bend it. It represents Odysseus's precise, calculated approach to justice, rather than the chaotic, blood-soaked melee combat of the battlefield. 59. Odysseus's decision to disguise himself as an impoverished beggar for the final quarter of the epic is deeply symbolic. In ancient Greece, beggars and strangers were considered to be under the direct protection of Zeus, meaning that mistreating one was a direct insult to the king of the gods. By suffering physical abuse, getting hit with footstools, and enduring constant insults from the suitors while dressed as a beggar, Odysseus gathers irrefutable moral and religious justification for his impending slaughter. The disguise turns the suitors' lack of charity into a capital offense against divine law. 60. The suitors in Odysseus's home are not merely obnoxious houseguests, they are actively murderous, which helps justify their brutal execution at the end of the epic. When they realize Telemachus has sneaked away to the mainland to gather news about his father, the lead suitors, particularly Antinous, plot to assassinate the young prince before he can return and claim his rightful inheritance. They take a ship and lie in wait at a rocky island called Asteris, intending to ambush Telemachus. Thanks to a warning from Athena, Telemachus alters his course and lands safely in secret, but the failed murder plot seals the suitor's doom. While the Odyssey ends with a divinely mandated peace in Ithaca, ancient Greek mythology didn't leave Odysseus alone for long. A later epic poem called the Telegony, which is now lost to history, though written summaries survive, detailed the events after the Odyssey. According to this myth, Telegonus, the son Odysseus unknowingly fathered with the sorceress Circe during his one-year stay on her island, sails to Ithaca to find his father. In a tragic case of mistaken identity, Telegonus raids the island, and when Odysseus comes out to defend his land, Telegonus accidentally kills him with a spear tipped with the spine of a stingray, fulfilling Tiresias's prophecy that Odysseus's death would come out of the sea. A defining stylistic element of the Odyssey is Homer's extensive use of epic similes, often called Homeric similes. Unlike simple comparisons, these extended similes run for several lines and compare heroic or terrifying actions to vivid everyday scenes from nature, farming, crafts, or domestic life. For example, when Odysseus drives a burning stake into the eye of the Cyclops Polyphemus, the action is compared in graphic detail to a blacksmith plunging a red-hot axe head into cold water to temper the steel. These intricate poetic devices helped bridge the gap between the monumental, mythical events of the epic and the relatable, everyday experiences of the ancient audience, grounding the fantastical narrative in tangible human reality. When Odysseus travels to the underworld, he encounters the ghost of his former crewmate, Elpenor, who died in a highly unheroic manner. Before leaving Circe's island, Elpenor got drunk, fell asleep on the sorceress's roof, and upon waking up in a daze, forgot to use the ladder, falling to his death and breaking his neck. Because the crew was in a rush, they left his body unburied. In the underworld, Elpenor begs Odysseus to return to Aea and give him a proper cremation and burial, illustrating the profound ancient Greek cultural anxiety regarding unburied bodies and the inability of the soul to find rest without proper funeral rites. During his descent into the underworld, Odysseus also encounters the silent, brooding spirit of Telamonian Ajax, one of the greatest Greek warriors from the Trojan War. The two men had a bitter rivalry over who would inherit the magical armor of Achilles after his death, a contest Odysseus won through his superior rhetorical skills, driving Ajax to madness and suicide. Even in death, Ajax refuses to forgive Odysseus. When Odysseus attempts to speak to him and offer words of reconciliation, the ghost simply turns his back and walks away in silence, representing one of the most powerful and chilling moments of lingering resentment in classical literature. Odysseus witnesses several famous mythological punishments while in the underworld, including the torment of Tantalus. Tantalus is forced to stand in a pool of water beneath a fruit tree with low branches. But whenever he reaches for the fruit, the winds blow the branches out of his grasp, and whenever he bends down to drink, the water drains away into the mud. This eternal punishment for offending the gods is the origin of the English word tantalize, perfectly capturing the agony of having something desirable eternally just out of reach. Near Tantalus, Odysseus also observes the eternal punishment of Sisyphus, a former king who cheated death and angered the gods. Sisyphus is condemned to roll a massive boulder up a steep hill, but every time he nears the very top, a magical force compels the stone to roll all the way back down to the bottom, forcing him to start over. This endless, agonizing, and fundamentally pointless labor has become a universal metaphor for futile tasks, later famously used by existentialist philosopher Albert Camus to describe the human condition. 67. The massive hunting bow that Odysseus uses to win Penelope's contest and slaughter the suitors has a rich backstory of its own. It originally belonged to a tragic figure named Iphitus, who gave it to a young Odysseus as a gesture of friendship and guest friendship, Xenia, when they met in Lacedaemon. Iphitus was later murdered by the hero Heracles, who violated the laws of hospitality by killing a guest in his own home. Odysseus never took this prized bow to the Trojan War, preferring to leave it safely at home in Ithaca as a memorial to his murdered friend, which explains why it was waiting there for his return. 68. Not all of the suitors who occupied Odysseus's home were completely evil or unrepentant, with Amphinomus serving as the prime example of a morally conflicted antagonist. Amphinomus is repeatedly described as the most decent of the suitors, and he even successfully argues against the plot to murder Telemachus, earning a subtle warning from the disguised Odysseus to leave the estate before the king returns. Tragically, the goddess Athena binds Amphinomus to his fate, ensuring he stays for the final slaughter, where he is killed by Telemachus, demonstrating that divine will in Homeric epics often overrides human morality or attempts at redemption. 69. During the brutal massacre in the Great Hall, Odysseus spares only 2 men from the slaughter, Phemius the bard and Medon the herald. Phemius begs for his life by arguing that the suitors forced him to sing for them against his will, and Medon is saved because Telemachus vouches for the herald's past kindness to him when he was a child. By sparing the poet and the messenger, Homer makes a profound statement about the sanctity of those who preserve culture and communicate truth, suggesting these roles are protected by the gods even in the midst of total warfare. In stark contrast to the spared bard and herald, Leodes the priest is shown absolutely no mercy by Odysseus, despite his desperate pleas. Leodes argues that he only served as the suitor's diviner and never participated in their physical abuses or plots, hoping his religious title will save him. Odysseus coldly rejects this defense, pointing out that as a priest, Leodes must have regularly prayed for Odysseus not to return, and for Penelope to marry one of the suitors, making him fully complicit in their treason before cleanly decapitating him. While much focus is given to Penelope's loyalty, her sister, Iphthime, plays a small but vital emotional role in the epic. When Penelope is consumed by grief and terror after discovering that the suitors are plotting to ambush and kill her son, Athena sends a phantom in the shape of Iphthime to visit Penelope in her dreams. This phantom sister comforts Penelope, assuring her that Telemachus is under the protection of the gods and will return safely, highlighting the psychological toll the 20-year ordeal took on Penelope and the necessity of divine intervention just to maintain her sanity. 72. The terrifying monsters Scylla and Charybdis were not the only geographical hazards on Odysseus's route. He also had to actively avoid the planktae, or the wandering rocks. These were massive, sheer cliffs that would smash together and destroy any ship that attempted to pass between them. A peril so great that even the gods' own doves could not fly through without being crushed. Circe warns Odysseus that only the legendary ship Argo, commanded by Jason, had ever survived the wandering rocks, prompting Odysseus to choose the deadly but slightly more predictable path through Scylla and Charybdis instead. 73. The destruction of Odysseus's crew on the island of Thrinacia is directly tied to a very specific, mystical number of cattle owned by the sun god Helios. Helios possesses exactly 7 herds of immortal cattle and 7 flocks of sheep, with exactly 50 animals in each, totaling 350 of each species. Modern scholars often interpret these numbers as representing the days of the ancient lunar calendar year, meaning that when Odysseus's starving men slaughtered these sacred animals, they were symbolically committing a cosmic crime against time and the natural order itself. Melantho is one of the most prominent disloyal maidservants in Odysseus's household, and her betrayal cuts particularly deep because Penelope practically raised her as her own daughter. Despite this maternal affection, Melantho repays Penelope with severe disrespect, openly mocking the disguised Odysseus and conducting a secret illicit affair with Eurymachus, one of the leading suitors. Her cruel behavior toward the disguised king and her total lack of gratitude toward the queen single her out for the brutal mass hanging that Telemachus oversees after the battle. Odysseus's grandfather, on his mother's side, Autolycus, was a famous thief and trickster, directly descended from the cunning god Hermes. It was Autolycus who originally named his grandson Odysseus, a name he derived from a Greek verb meaning to be angry at or to suffer pain, prophetically declaring that the boy would grow up to both inflict and endure immense suffering. This trickster lineage highlights that Odysseus's penchant for deception, disguise, and strategic lying is not just a learned survival tactic, but an inherited family trait blessed by the gods. The famous scar that reveals Odysseus's identity to his old nurse was acquired during a coming-of-age hunting trip on Mount Parnassus with his grandfather Autolycus and his uncles. While tracking a massive wild boar through dense brush, the young Odysseus confidently charged the beast with his spear. But the boar struck first, hooking its tusk deep into the flesh above his knee. Though he killed the boar and survived, the jagged scar remained a permanent physical marker of his transition into manhood and his intrinsic martial courage. The physical combat between the disguised Odysseus and the local beggar Iros serves as a dark, comedic parody of the epic duels found in the Iliad. Iros, used to having a monopoly on begging at the palace, aggressively territorializes the space and challenges Odysseus to a fistfight for the suitor's amusement. Athena subtly enhances Odysseus's physique when he rolls up his tunic, terrifying Iros. Odysseus holds back his lethal strength just enough to avoid killing the man, instead shattering Eros's jaw with a single calculated punch and unceremoniously dragging him out by his feet. Among the suitors, a particularly arrogant man named Ctesippus demonstrates the ultimate perversion of Xenia during a feast. Pretending to offer the disguised beggar a traditional guest gift, Ctesippus picks up a bloody cow's hoof from a basket and hurls it directly at Odysseus's head. Odysseus casually dodges it, but Telemachus erupts in fury, threatening to run Ctesippus through with a spear for the insult, marking a critical moment in the epic, where the young prince confidently asserts his authority over his father's household, just before the climax. Theoclymenus, a fugitive prophet from the mainland, is granted asylum on Telemachus' ship when the prince is returning to Ithaca. Theoclymenus comes from a long, cursed line of seers and is fleeing a murder charge, but his presence in the epic is vital for delivering escalating prophecies of doom to the suitors. It is Theoclymenus who experiences the terrifying, hallucinatory vision of the walls bleeding and the sun being extinguished right before the slaughter, acting as a mortal mouthpiece for the gods' impending judgment. When Telemachus travels to Pylos, King Nestor insists that his own youngest son, Pisistratus, accompany the Ithacan prince on his overland chariot journey to Sparta. Pisistratus serves as an important foil and companion for Telemachus. Having grown up in a stable, peaceful household with a living father, he represents the confident, articulate young nobleman that Telemachus is striving to become. Their friendship during this road trip provides Telemachus with much-needed peer support and models the kind of aristocratic camaraderie he has been entirely deprived of in Ithaca. The concept of the oikos, meaning the household, family line, and estate, is the central social unit defended in the Odyssey. The epic argues that the destruction of the oikos is the ultimate societal tragedy, far worse than the fall of a city like Troy. Odysseus is not merely fighting to win back his wife. He is fighting to restore the economic, social, and spiritual integrity of his entire oikos, which the suitors have been systematically devouring and corrupting for years. Dogs play a fascinating symbolic role throughout Homeric poetry, often representing the boundary between civilization and the wild. While Odysseus's dog, Argus, represents absolute fidelity and the tragic passage of time in a civilized household, the feral dogs outside Eumaeus's hut are vicious and dangerous, nearly attacking the disguised king when he first arrives. This duality shows that in the ancient world, an animal's nobility was directly tied to its master's presence, and a house without its king quickly reverts to a savage, feral state. The disguises used by the gods in the Odyssey are not mere illusions, but profound physical transformations that often carry symbolic weight. When Athena transforms Odysseus into an old beggar, she doesn't just change his clothes, she literally shrivels his skin, dims the light in his eyes, and thins his hair, physically manifesting the toll that 20 years of suffering would naturally take on a man. Conversely, when she restores his appearance before his reunion with Penelope, she makes him taller, more muscular, and coats his hair in a golden sheen, practically turning him into an immortal figure. In 1614, the English poet George Chapman completed his translation of the Odyssey, which became one of the most culturally significant English versions of the epic ever produced. Chapman's translation was renowned for its sweeping poetic grandeur rather than strict literal accuracy, and it served as the primary gateway to Homer for generations of English readers. It famously inspired John Keats to write the sonnet on first looking into Chapman's Homer, capturing the absolute awe of experiencing the ancient Greek epic in the English language for the first time. '86. In the early 18th century, Alexander Pope produced a wildly successful translation of the Odyssey, written entirely in heroic couplets. Pope's version smoothed out the rugged, ancient qualities of Homer's text to fit the refined, neoclassical tastes of Enlightenment-era Britain, making it read more like a contemporary piece of aristocratic poetry. While purists criticized it for being too distinctly Pope and not enough Homer, it remained the dominant English translation for over a century due to its incredible commercial success and elegant rhythm. '87. In 2017, classical scholar Emily Wilson made history by becoming the first woman to ever publish a complete English translation of the Odyssey. Her highly acclaimed version broke away from the tradition of translating the epic in a lofty, archaic style, instead using crisp, direct, and unpretentious iambic pentameter. Wilson's translation was also praised for stripping away centuries of baked-in cultural biases, translating descriptions of female characters and enslaved people with a more accurate, objective lens that challenged how previous male translators had interpreted the text. '88. The survival of the Odyssey through the Middle Ages is largely owed to the meticulous work of Byzantine Greek scholars in Constantinople. While Western Europe completely lost the ability to read Greek and forgot the original text for centuries, relying only on Latin summaries, Byzantine scribes continually copied and preserved the ancient manuscripts. It wasn't until the fall of Constantinople in 1453 that fleeing Greek scholars brought these precious manuscripts back to Italy, sparking the Renaissance and reintroducing Homer's actual words to the Western world. '89. In the 1930s, scholars Milman Parry and Albert Lord revolutionized the study of the Odyssey by proving the oral formulaic theory. By studying illiterate bards in modern-day Yugoslavia who could sing epics as long as Homer's from memory, they proved that the repetitive epithets and formulaic phrases in the Odyssey, like rosy-fingered dawn, were not signs of lazy writing, but essential cognitive tools used by oral poets to compose verse on the fly. This discovery permanently laid to rest the idea that Homer wrote the epic with a pen and paper. '90. While Odysseus is famous for his silver tongue, his interactions with the Phaeacians reveal his absolute mastery of competitive rhetoric. When a young Phaeacian nobleman named Euryalus insults Odysseus's athletic ability, suggesting he looks more like a greedy merchant than a warrior, Odysseus delivers a devastating verbal dressing down. He eloquently explains that the gods do not give all gifts to one man. Euryalus may be handsome, but his mind is entirely empty, completely humiliating the youth before stepping up and effortlessly throwing a heavy discus further than any Phaeacian to prove his point. '91. The final book of the Odyssey, Book 24, has been a source of intense debate among scholars since antiquity, with many ancient librarians believing it was added later by a different author. The transition feels abrupt, and it contains unusual scenes, such as the suitors' ghosts chatting with Agamemnon and Achilles in the underworld, and the somewhat rushed, divinely forced peace treaty at the end. Despite these stylistic differences, most modern scholars agree that it is essential for resolving the blood feud logic of the plot, preventing the story from ending on a note of unresolved civil war. 92. The sirens in Homer's text are not described as the beautiful fish-tailed mermaids that dominate modern pop culture. In ancient Greek art and subsequent folklore, they were depicted as terrifying birdwomen with human heads. Homer himself actually provides zero physical description of the sirens in the text, focusing entirely on the fatal, intoxicating allure of their voices and the rotting piles of bones that surround their meadow. Their promise to Odysseus is not one of sexual seduction, but of absolute omniscient knowledge, tempting his intellectual curiosity rather than his physical lust. The legendary bed of Odysseus and Penelope, carved from a living olive tree, holds immense symbolic resonance regarding their marriage and the stability of Ithaca. The olive tree was sacred to Athena, their patron goddess, and represents endurance, peace, and deep-rooted strength in Mediterranean culture. Because the bed cannot be moved without destroying the living roots of the tree, it serves as the ultimate metaphor for their immovable fidelity and the foundation of their kingdom, which cannot be uprooted by the invading suitors. 94. Dolius, an elderly servant of Penelope's family, provides a complicated look at loyalty at the very end of the epic. While Dolius and 6 of his sons remain loyal to Odysseus and stand with him against the furious families of the dead suitors, his other 2 children are Melanthius the goatherd and Melantho the maid, the 2 most treacherous servants who were brutally executed. This deep family division within the servant class illustrates how completely the 20-year crisis in Ithaca fractured households and forced individuals to choose sides at the cost of their own blood. 95. When the families of the slaughtered suitors gather in the town square demanding revenge, the prophet Halitherses attempts to stop the violence with a speech of harsh truth. He reminds the grieving fathers that he warned them years ago that their sons were acting wickedly and ruining the king's estate. But the parents did nothing to discipline their children or stop the abuse of hospitality. Halitherses explicitly blames the parents for their sons' deaths, showing that the moral corruption in Ithaca was not limited to the youth, but was a systemic failure of the older generation. 96. Athena's choice to disguise herself as Mentor to guide Telemachus was so impactful that it forever changed the English language. In the text, Mentor is simply an older, trusted Ithacan nobleman whom Odysseus left in charge of his household when he went to Troy. However, because the goddess of wisdom used his form to dispense crucial advice, courage, and strategy to the young prince, the name Mentor eventually became a generalized noun for any wise, trusted counselor or teacher who takes a younger person under their wing. 97. While Agamemnon is often viewed as the supreme commander of the Greek forces in the Iliad, his ghost in the Odyssey is a pathetic, deeply cynical figure. Murdered by his own wife, Clytemnestra, upon his return from Troy, Agamemnon's spirit constantly warns Odysseus never to trust women, not even the faithful Penelope. His tragic, bloody homecoming serves as the dark mirror to Odysseus's journey, representing the worst-case scenario of what could happen if a hero returns home without caution, disguise, or a thorough assessment of his household's loyalty. 98. The magical herb moly, given to Odysseus by Hermes to counteract Circe's magic, is described in fascinating, almost scientific detail. Homer notes that it has a black root and a milk-white flower, and that it is incredibly difficult for mortal men to uproot, requiring the power of a god to harvest safely. For centuries, botanists and historians have tried to identify the real-world plant that inspired moly, with popular theories suggesting it might be the snowdrop flower, Galanthus nivalis, which contains an alkaloid that can counteract the amnesiac effects of jimson weed or other hallucinogens. 99. The Phaeacian ships on the island of Scheria are depicted as magical, almost futuristic vessels that require no rowers, no steering oars, and no captains. King Alcinous boasts that his ships are telepathic. They intuitively know the thoughts and intended destinations of the men who board them, traversing the oceans at supernatural speeds while completely enveloped in protective mist and cloud. This magical transport represents the ultimate contrast to Odysseus's grueling decade-long struggle with manual rowing and hostile seas, providing a frictionless transition back to the real world of Ithaca. 100. The overarching narrative of the Odyssey fundamentally champions the power of human endurance and resilience over pure, unadulterated strength. Odysseus is frequently battered, starved, shipwrecked, humiliated, and brought to the very edge of total despair, yet his defining trait is his refusal to quit. The epic concludes that true heroism is not just found in dying a glorious death on the battlefield, but in the gritty, agonizing day-by-day struggle to survive a hostile universe, outwit insurmountable obstacles, and fight one's way back to the people they love. And there you have it, 100 facts that capture the immense scale and enduring power of Homer's The Odyssey. This epic is far more than just a dusty, ancient text about a king trying to sail home. It is a sprawling, complex reflection on human nature, survival, and the lengths we will go to protect what we love. From the mythological monsters that terrified ancient sailors, to the strict moral codes of hospitality that defined Greek culture, these details highlight why the poem has survived for 3 millennia. Its influence is baked into our modern storytelling, shaping everything from the classic hero's journey archetype in modern cinema to the foundational structure of Western literature. The bards who first sang these verses around ancient campfires could never have known that their words would eventually be written down, translated into hundreds of languages, and studied across the globe. But their legacy endures. The next time you use the word Odyssey to describe a long trip or a difficult endeavor, you are keeping a 3,000-year-old oral tradition alive.